Welcome to the Wingmen Show. Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown, and we are floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingmen Show. Once again, my name is Commander Drew Brown, but my wingman, my friend, my main man is Dr. Paul Thompson. How are you today, Dr. Paul?
I'm pretty good today, Mr. Drew. It's good to see you. Good to have the show. Hope we can say something inspiring to someone to improve their day.
Oh, that's great. You know, that's true. We hope that you feel better after the show than when you started. Okay, our quote for the day. Imagination needs watering and weeding. And that's by Lynn Hardy Yackel. Once again, imagination needs watering and weeding. That means some of the thoughts in your mind, you need to take away some of the bad stuff to find out what's truly good in it. Don't you think, Dr. P?
Yeah, exactly. You need to be open for information. That weeding is basically development, and you can get a lot of that through getting information by reading, in my opinion. It could be online. I still like to have a book in my hand if it's given a choice. But being open to new ideas. Years ago, people would look at newspapers or magazines. Like you don't see I can't think of the last time I saw somebody looking at a newspaper or magazine. I had to go back in the archives. I mean, it hasn't been in maybe a decade or so. But hey, that's the way to do it. You know, get some information, something other than just watching TV, the same stuff all the time, same mindless stuff all the time. Remember, learn a new word, get a dictionary, learn one word a day or one word a week. One word a month, you'll probably surpass most people in adulthood.
Well, Dr. Paul sent me a Facebook letter, and we really don't do that much social media, but I have to tell you, our main man, Brandon, from Mystical Marketing, he does all our social media, and he does it so great. Our Instagram little clips are pumping. They are bad. But Dr. Paul sent me a letter from this guy in Paris, and we're going to take the next couple of shows to read the entire letter, but I'm just going to start off with the first part of the letter. And here we go. This is what Dr. Paul sent me, and I think it's great. From Dominique Crischel. Between the age of 55 and your time of death, it is advisable to use the money you have saved. Use it and enjoy it. Don't save it for those who have no idea the sacrifices you made to get it. Remember that there is nothing more outrageous than a son or daughter-in-law coming up with great ideas to spend your hard-earned savings. Attention. This is also a bad time for investing, even if it looks wonderful or safe. They bring nothing but problems and worries. It's your time to enjoy life. Stop worrying about your children and grandchildren's financial situation. And don't feel bad about spending your money on yourself. You cared for them for many years, and you taught them what you could. You gave them education, food, shelter, and support. It is now their responsibility to make their own money. Maintain a healthy life. Exercise, like walking every day. Eat well, get plenty of sleep. It's easy to get sick at this age, and it's harder to stay healthy. That's why you need to stay fit and be aware of your medical and physical needs. Stay in touch with your doctor. Get medical tests done even when you think you are feeling well. Take care of your health. How about that, Dr. Paul? That's just the first part of this letter, and I'll tell you what, this letter really does something for me, Dr. Paul, because, you know, you remember what ETOPS meant? The extended time when we used to fly all over the world, we had ETOPS. Well, now I have another ETOP, except my ETOP spells extend time on planet. Extend time on planet. And that's what I'm doing. I watched this show called The Blue Zone on Netflix, and they had 5 or 6 places all over the world that had the most 100-year-old people in those zones. And they all had 4 things that were the same. All of them, no matter where they were, no matter what they looked like. The first thing they did, their bodies always were moving. Keep moving. Number two, they ate healthy. Number three, they all had purpose. And number four, they had a good group of family and friends.
Yeah, that's a great letter. That's great advice. And this time it's, it's advice not to just young people, young adults. It's really older people, obviously, like us. Yeah, that's good advice, and it's easy to kind of get wrapped up. And I think it's kind of natural to think about your children, grandchildren, and those who depend on you, or at least those who have for such a long time. But realize in the end, or not even the end, in the beginning, we all have to learn how to, fly. My mother would say to me a lot of times, straighten up and fly right. This is years before anything to do with airplanes.
That was a song, Dr. Paul.
That's right. I do remember that. Maybe that's where she got it from. I mean, I'm 5 years old when I hear this the first time. So we're not talking about, joining the Marine Corps or the Blue Angels or anything like that. But yeah, that was the thing I was raised with. Straighten up and fly right. Basically, fly, get ready to move, do something, because you're not gonna stay a child all your life. And even if you're, an adult, it's sometimes I've seen that people are just way too dependent on their mother, just their mothers and fathers, usually their mothers. I've actually seen it to the extreme sometime in their 60s and 70s.
Living with their parents. I believe this, Dr. Paul. You're supposed to have your own nucleus, and
Mhm.
that's your family. And once you get old enough and you get married and you have children, you have your own nucleus.
Right.
That's how I raised my children. All
Right.
right, Dr. Paul, check out those badass jets we got behind us. I have the space shuttle, and you have some Blue Angels. And everybody out there, please, thank you so much for watching us. Thank you for making comments. If you can, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Threads, everything you can imagine, we're on. Thank you. And our frequent flyers, that's all the people who listen to us every week. Thank you so much for listening to us. And everybody, we have a newsletter. We have a great newsletter. And that newsletter is at wingmenshow.com. That's wingmenshow.com. Write us. And actually, we have a frequent flow line on there. If you ask us a question, Dr. Paul and I will answer it. And here's our question for this week. It's a female, a young female, 42 years old, from Tupelo, Mississippi. Dr. Paul, you know where Tupelo, Mississippi is?
Yes. Do you want me to tell you, or are you going to tell us?
No, I want you to tell me.
Tupelo is right next to One Below.
And the reason we both said that is Richard Pryor had that in one of his comedy skits, and I just can't get that out of my mind. Every time Dr. Paul and I hear Tupelo, we think of One Below. Anyway, this 42-year-old female from Tupelo, Mississippi, says that she's getting more and more frustrated and angry with others. She just wants to get away, and she needs Wingmen for some advice. Dr. Paul, I'm going to let you start off with giving my girl from Tupelo, Mississippi, some advice.
Yeah, well, you're saying you're kind of frustrated with people. Not sure what that means. Well, maybe you need to be around different people, or maybe you need to change your perspective. What is it they're angry at, or what are you angry at? What are they doing? Are they doing something specific? Is it something you can avoid? Don't be one of these people who's just angry every day, all the time, because it's a new day. That'll eat you up inside. And as a friend of mine often says, hate will feed upon itself. And that really doesn't help the aging process from what I've seen of people. So don't be irritated and aggravated all the time. Maybe at work that can happen. But if you're constantly in a negative mood, you're actually dragging yourself down. Even when the people who are bothering you or making you feel bad, if they're long gone. And if it's an abusive relationship, they may not even know about it, but you're suffering in silence with them around them. So if you can change your company, change the people you're around, maybe that's a way to start.
That's great advice. Dr. Paul, I have a saying in my Facts in Life, if you can't change your friends, change your friends. But I will tell you this. This is my advice as far as other people getting you angry and frustrated. There was a show, and Dr. Paul actually sent me this clip from Star Trek. And Captain Kirk was on the bridge of the Enterprise, and he had Abraham Lincoln with him. And Lieutenant Uhura, who was a black female on the show, came over to Captain Kirk and was going to say something to him. And all of a sudden, Abraham Lincoln looked at her and he said, "Oh my God, what a beautiful negress." And then he said, "Oh my God, I hope I didn't insult you." And this is the point right here. She looked at him and she said, "We have evolved since then. You don't have the ability to insult me. You don't have the ability to insult me, to get me angry, to get me frustrated." This is where I'm coming from. I have my own mind, and I should not ever give somebody else the keys to my mind. In other words, I shouldn't allow other people to get me mad and frustrated. Now, it's hard. It's very hard, especially in the beginning when something happens, but need to learn to calm yourself down. And as far as getting away, don't ever forget, wherever you go, there you are. Geographical changes don't always help, but sometimes they do. Or why don't you just take a cruise on Virgin Voyage, take a solo cruise and have some fun? What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Solo cruise, have some fun, and catch up on past episodes of the Wingman Show that you might have missed.
There you go. And you know what that brings me to? It brings me to a Wingmen PSA from the 11 facts in life. This is fact number 6. Stay away from these 8 deadly sins. Last week was pride. This week is envy. The grass is greener on the other side because it's astroturf or artificial turf. Envy. The grass is greener on the other side because it's artificial turf. Paul, I've been saying that for I don't know how long. People always look over see somebody else that has it better than them, or they want to aspire to be somebody else. Be very happy where you are. And if you can count 10 fingers and 10 toes today, start using gratitude. Huh, Paul?
That's a good idea. It's easy you think the grass is greener because I guess we're attracted to different things. So it's got to be better, got to be better. But look at all the famous people, athletes, entertainers, whatever, whose lives are not so great. Maybe they don't have financial problems, but get some others that leads to behaviors that are really destructive, fatal, and oftentimes. You say, what happened? Why do they do that? What happened with them? So all the glitters is not gold. It's another old phrase. And when you talk about Captain Kirk earlier, a lot of people may not know who Captain Kirk is.
No, I figured that, but maybe we'll put some pictures up of Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura.
The original.
We'll put it up on our YouTube.
Right. Yeah, the original.
All right. I wanted to say this because you made a comment when we were talking about flying off aircraft carriers, and we both qualified on the USS Lexington, which was a training carrier when we flew upon it. And you made this comment that it was really small. And I started thinking about that. And I have to say, Dr. Paul, and I know you'll agree with me, but at night, they were all small. I was on the USS Nimitz, which was the largest aircraft carrier at that time. And that carrier and the USS Lexington looked exactly the same at night because all it was black and a light. And I had to land upon that ship. So all of them look small at night, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're talking about the landing area. Yeah, it's about the same. Coming in at night, you don't have a lot to look at. If the weather's really bad, you may have less to look at. And it's really just a series of lights that have to line up a certain way that you have to deal with. I don't know how this magic carpet thing affects that, if it does or not. But yeah, I thought it was smaller because Lexington is like 875 feet long and like 190 feet wide, but like the Gerald R. Ford is like 1,100 feet long and like 250 feet wide. Strange enough, when they can pack them up, they both hold the same amount of airplanes. The Lexington held like up to 89 airplanes, the wings folded jammed together. And the Gerald R. Ford, they say, holds 90 airplanes.
Wow.
But yeah, I was really surprised to see that. but they're a lot different sizes. It's not just like little Hellcats, and you get all an assortment of aircraft. I thought that was an interesting thing. Like a cruise ship. Cruise ship can be as big as a carrier.
Especially these new cruise ships. They are freaking gigantic. They really are. They got 5,000 people, but they're all there for partying. I always said on the aircraft carrier, Dr. Paul, every nut and bolt was made for war. But on these nice cruise ships, every nut and bolt, they put them there for pleasure.
Yeah,
So
I always thought of an aircraft carrier was a luxury liner without the luxury.
very good. Well, Dr. Paul and I, we give you the gouge. And in the Navy, the gouge was shit you really needed to know, but nobody told you. So here's some gouge. I've been wanting to say this for a long time. Dr. Paul, do you know what break a leg means when an actor goes on stage or you go out to do a show or to play ball and they say, break a leg?
Yeah, I
You have
thought it was just
any
a
idea
thing.
what break a leg means?
Yeah, I thought it was in show business to have a good performance or do well. I don't know any more history.
That is correct. But the reason they say break a leg is because curtains used to be held up on these big stanchions that they called legs. And if your performance was good enough where you had to keep coming back in and out, they close the curtain and then they call you back out. And then they close the curtain and they call you back out. Well, if you do it enough times, one of those stanchions broke, and that means you broke a leg, and that means your performance was that good. How about that, Dr. Paul?
I didn't know that. That's deep in the weeds on that. Break a
Well,
leg.
here's some more gouge for you, Dr. Paul. We all want to eat. For some reason, people want to eat bad and not take the consequences for it. They want antacids, they want injections, they want pills and laxatives. And what you and I talked about this, what blows my mind are those commercials of those hamburgers and sausages and hot dogs running after people in the Tums commercial or the antacid commercial and saying that they'll beat them up until they take a Tums. Well, how about not eating that shit? And then you won't need to take Tums or laxatives or things like that. Well, the gouge that we wanted to talk about today was called intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting. Now, we will give you this disclaimer. Dr. Paul and I are not medical doctors. We are not medical doctors. And everything that we tell you medically, we are doing ourselves. So before you do anything that we ever suggest, please ask a doctor. There are 3 ways that you can fast intermittently. The first one is alternate day fasting. That means you eat one day and the next day you don't eat. The other one is 5-2 fasting. You eat 5 days and you fast on the weekends. But the one that I'm doing is called daily time restricted fasting. In other words, that I only eat in a window of 8 hours. And for 16 hours, my body does not digest food. I called one of Drew's basketball friends and I said, my knees are killing me. What should I do? And you know what he told me? He said, stop eating. And I was like, what? He said, when you stop eating, your cells now have time to repair instead of digesting. So if you give your cells and your body time to repair pain and inflammation, then you won't have as much. But if all you do is eat all day long, that's all your body does is digest food and it doesn't have time to repair itself. What do you think about intermittent fasting, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, I practice it most days. Just become kind of a lifestyle. I do what you do. It's that time restricted thing. I don't do the 5 and 2. Like they talk about 16 hours off, 8 hour, feeding window. They call these windows. That's kind of about what I'm doing. It may be 16 hours off, maybe 15 or so, but taking a break at least 12 because we're eating all the time. If you look at pictures of people, decades ago, whatever, you didn't see a whole lot of obesity, just in general pictures or in society at all. But now there's so many ways to eat. I guess I'm in the generation when fast food was developed. And I ate plenty of it actually, plenty of it. Probably better quality than now, but over time, you pay for that. We all pay for that, whether we realize it or not. So, and I wasn't eating all the time. I ate enough, but I was burning a lot of calories playing and moving and playing ball and all that stuff. You burn them up. But as you get older in life, you stop doing it. And some people have never done it ever. So they just blow up and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So,
Back a long time ago, we didn't have all these conveniences. So people had to keep their body moving, whether they were working or traveling or doing something. They had to get up, even getting up and getting the remote now. Now you could just yell at your television and it'll change stations.
You're right. You're right. That up and down is you're doing squats. You get up out of the couch and turning you down. You're sitting you down. You're doing slow motion squats with moving. So you're actually doing a lot. It comes down to movement and mental movement too, physical mental.
All right, Dr. Paul, I have a question for you. This is the gouge. People love to travel. I love to travel. You love to travel. What do you think the top 15 safest countries are? Can you give me 3 out of the top 15 safest countries to travel in? And that's for crime and terrorism.
Okay, I'll say I'll throw Japan. How about Japan?
Japan's number 12. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. Japan. Next one would be safe. There's a war going on there. There's the world in such turmoil. I'm struggling to find. See, where is everybody kind of happy? How about New Zealand? I'll throw that out.
New Zealand is number 11.
Okay, you're getting closer. How about Luxembourg?
Luxembourg is not there. So
Okay.
I will read them to you real kind of quickly and we'll discuss this. But these are the safest places to travel, the top 15: Canada, Switzerland, Norway, Ireland, Netherlands, the UK, Portugal, where I'm going real soon, Denmark, Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, France, Spain, and number 15 is Brazil. No America on the safest countries, Dr. Paul.
I got one. I got New Zealand in there. Kind
You
of.
got two? No, you got Japan too.
Okay.
All right. Well, since we're doing that, this is good one. I have the top 10 best states to retire and the top 10 worst states to retire. Can you give me 3 of the best states to retire, Dr. Paul?
Okay. Well, everybody's going to. I'm going to say they're going to Florida, California, New York, Florida, Texas, North Dakota. I just made that.
Okay, you got one of them. You got number 1. The
Okay.
best states to retire are Florida, Colorado, Virginia, Delaware, Wyoming, Idaho, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Montana, and Pennsylvania. Now, Dr. Paul, give me 2 or 3 of the worst states to retire in.
I don't get mad. I'm going to guess Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas.
You got all 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah. I'll go from the best to the worst. Starting at number 10, worst place to retire, Illinois. Then Arkansas, Washington. Number 7 is New York. 6, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Rhode Island. Number 3, Mississippi. Number 2, New Jersey. And the worst state to retire in is Kentucky. What about that, Paul?
How about that? Kentucky. Didn't say why.
Because of now it's economics, medical. They also had crime, and they had weather, and they had like 54 different topics that they chose from. It's just the worst place to retire is Kentucky. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, Dr. Paul, we have something called the Wingmen Show, and once a week we give the best wingman of the week. And I have 2 for you right now. And if you know what a riptide is, if you don't, you'll know now. But there were these 2 very, very nice people from England, matter of fact, and their names were Belinda and Robert Stone. Belinda and Robert Stone were in Barbados, and they were out there swimming in the ocean. And all of a sudden, these 2 Canadian teenagers, Emma Baseman and Zoe Meklinsick, 13 and 14 years old, they all of a sudden heard somebody screaming. And so they turned around, and there was this woman, Belinda. Belinda was out there, I think 50 feet from them, and she was yelling, help, help. So they went out to her, they got her, they brought her back, and she said, my husband is further out. Please go get him. He's drowning. Emma and Zoe got on their boogie boards, but this is a trip, Dr. Paul. Before they went out on their boogie boards, from this story that Belinda said, the wife, she said, Belinda urged them not to risk their young lives to save her 60-year-old husband. But without lifeguards on the beach that morning, fate had them as the two most experienced swimmers anywhere. But she urged them not to go out there and get her husband. That's a little weird. But anyway, our wingmen of the week are two wonderful swimmers from Canada who helped two wonderful people from England. Dr. Paul, oh, let me tell you this story. That's the reason I picked this story. I went out to Fire Island to visit my friends Danny and Evelyn Rappaport. And I'm a good swimmer. You know, when you're in the Navy, you have to be a good swimmer. And I'm a real good swimmer. And I jumped in the ocean and I started making believe I was doing butterfly strokes, a couple of them, and swimming. And all of a sudden, I got caught in a riptide. And Dr. Paul, I have to tell you that I was actually waiting for somebody to come get me. The secret is now, if you ever, God forbid, get caught in a riptide, don't try to swim back to shore. Try to swim sideways. Because if you swim sideways, sooner or later, you'll get out of that rip current. But that rip current, I will tell you this, I feared for my life at that time. I didn't know if I could keep swimming. I was that tired. I made it to shore, and as I made it to shore, actually, the lifeguard was starting to run over to me. But that was a hairy, very scary story, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you made it out. I've been caught in a couple of them, but they were small, but I could see the power that they had. In that time, I didn't even know about going parallel and learned that years later. Yeah, you can wear yourself out. You can wear yourself out totally. So sometimes you have to kind of go with it, fight against it, but, fight against by going horizontal, not in the same line as the force is pulling you out.
That's the way to save your life. Well, Dr. Paul, anything that you and our listeners think is beautiful, anything that you and our listeners think, anything you think is important, and Dr. Paul, anything that makes you and all of our listeners happy, may you have that today and every day. I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too, and we appreciate all those for listening, liking, sharing this message. Send us to a friend if you'd like it. If you watch this on YouTube, please consider giving us a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. And subscribe so you'll get a notification whenever we post a new show. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth, and goodwill towards all men and women.